There comes a moment in many lives when the world begins to feel dim, not because the sun has disappeared, but because something within us has gone quiet. You wake up and nothing excites you. Your thoughts spiral. Your chest feels heavy. The weight of simply existing becomes too much, and often those around you cannot see the battle, but you feel it, in your bones, in your breath, in your silence. Depression and anxiety are not merely moods or disorders. They are messengers, signals from the deeper layers of the psyche, calling out for attention, understanding, and ultimately, transformation. What if your suffering has meaning? What if it's pointing not to your weakness, but to your untapped strength? Let's explore the hidden psychology of depression and anxiety, not just to understand the darkness, but to uncover the light within it. There is a cry that echoes from within the soul, a voice that too often goes unheard beneath the noise of modern life, the cry of the unlived life. It is not the loud cry of external chaos, but the deep, aching whisper from the depths of our being. From that secret place we often abandon to fit into the expectations placed upon us. We suffer not always because something is wrong with us, but because something essential within us has been neglected, denied, or buried alive. In the quiet chambers of the psyche there exists a force, the self, that yearns for expression, for authenticity, for the freedom to unfold as it was meant to. But in our pursuit of order, of validation, of external achievement, we trade the gold of our inner world for the counterfeit comfort of approval. We put on masks, adapt to roles, live out scripts handed down to us by family, culture, and fear. The soul, however, does not forget. It waits, and when it waits too long, it begins to protest. Depression, in this sense, is not merely a malfunction. It is the language of the soul crying out for truth. It is not simply a mental illness to be eradicated, but a message to be deciphered. Behind the heaviness, the numbness, the exhaustion, there is a sacred lament. You have not lived what is yours to live. It is not that you have failed, but that you have failed to be yourself. We are taught early to suppress desire in the name of being good, being practical, being responsible, and these virtues have their place. But when they are pursued at the expense of one's own essence, they become prisons. A child who loved to dance is told to be serious. An adolescent who dreamed of painting is warned to choose something realistic. A young adult with a wild vision is pressured into stability. So we comply, we forget, but the body remembers, the unconscious remembers, and it begins to speak in the only language it has symptoms. A man once told me he was drowning in success. Everything around him sparkled, his reputation, his wealth, his influence. But everything inside him was dark. Each evening he numbed himself with alcohol, haunted not by failure, but by the dreams he abandoned. He had once wanted to be a composer, to give voice to the music that pulsed through him like a second heartbeat. But he buried that dream, and the artist in him did not die, it went underground. Depression was not his weakness, it was his truth, trying to find a way to the surface. What we call pathology is often prophecy. Depression does not always mean something is broken. It may mean something is awakening, but awakening is painful. To feel the distance between the life you live and the life you were meant to live is unbearable. And yet, to avoid that pain is to remain numb, to remain asleep. This is why the journey of healing is not only about symptom relief. It is about meaning. It is about becoming honest with oneself. For many, the cure for depression lies not in medication alone, but in excavation, in descending into the forgotten places of the soul and reclaiming the treasures buried there. What have you silenced? What passion have you sacrificed? Whose approval did you chase while abandoning your own? The world rewards conformity, not authenticity, but the soul does not care for applause. It longs to express itself in its fullness. And if you will not allow it space in your life, it will create space through suffering, anxiety, depression, restlessness. These are not enemies, they are signals. They are the psyche's way of alerting you have gone off course. You are betraying something sacred within. In my work, I have seen people come alive not when they achieve more, but when they remember what they truly love. A woman worn down by years in a loveless marriage found joy again, not through therapy alone, but when she began to paint the way she did as a girl. A man imprisoned by perfectionism found peace not by eliminating fear, but by giving himself permission to fail as a writer, just to write again. These were not medical miracles. These were psychological homecomings, and yet the road to such homecoming is rarely easy. To admit you have abandoned yourself is to grieve. To choose a new path is to confront uncertainty. The unlived life does not resurrect without cost, but what is the cost of ignoring it? A life that looks successful, yet feels meaningless, a soul that ages, yet never matures, a body that breathes, yet never sings. You may be praised for your sacrifice. People may admire your achievements, but late at night, when the world goes silent, the question remains, did you live what was yours to live? Depression may be your soul's refusal to accept a lie. It may be its rebellion against a life of falsehood, and in that sense, it is not your enemy, it is your guide. When the cry of the unlived life emerges, it is not too late. That cry is the beginning. It is the call to turn inward, to excavate the forgotten, to reclaim the lost, to make amends with the self you betrayed. You may not be able to undo the past, but you can refuse to repeat it. You can begin again. You can listen. You can ask, what is it that I love? What is it that I have abandoned? What song remains unsung within me? And when you listen long enough, you may hear the whisper beneath the pain. You were meant for something else. Not necessarily something grand or impressive, but something true, something that belongs to you and no one else. Depression, then, becomes not the end, but the threshold, the beginning of the journey back to your soul. Do not silence that cry. Do not sedate it. Do not judge it. Honor it. Let it guide you. Let it teach you where you strayed, and then follow it, not with fear, but with reverence, for in that cry is your salvation. In that cry is the life you were meant to live. Anxiety, in its most primal and unfiltered essence, is not a pathology, not a defect to be corrected, but a signal, a sacred tension between the self you have known and the self you are destined to become. It does not stem from the reality of danger, but from the shadow of possibility. It emerges not from what is, but from what might be, from the vast, untamed frontier of your own potential. The future, with all its unknowns, holds the terrifying promise of transformation, and the psyche, though yearning to grow, trembles at the cost it must pay. The anxious soul stands on the threshold of becoming. It sees not only the promise of light, but also the inevitable loss of the familiar. For to become, we must first let go. We must relinquish the comfort of identity, the mask we have worn, the roles we have rehearsed. Growth demands death, the death of who we were, and the psyche, shaped and conditioned to survive, recoils in instinctual fear. Imagine the young woman, raised in a small town, preparing to leave her home for the first time to study in a foreign land. She stands amid her packed bags, but her chest tightens, her breath shortens, her mind floods with doubts. She questions her decision, her strength, her worth. But if we listen closely, not to the words of her panic, but to the voice beneath them, we do not hear a fear of failure. We hear a fear of power, a fear of expansion, a fear of finally stepping into the fullness of her being. What terrifies her is not that she will fall, but that she will fly. This is the paradox of anxiety. It arises in moments when life offers us the chance to step into our truth. It accompanies us not when we are stagnant, but when we are on the cusp of change. The tension within is the soul awakening, stirring beneath the surface, challenging the ego to make space for something new. And because the ego is rooted in the known, in what is stable, predictable, and safe it resists, we have been taught to fear anxiety, to view it as an enemy, a malfunction, a disorder to be eradicated. But anxiety is often the soul's way of announcing a shift. It is the prelude to transformation, the trembling of the psyche before the leap into new territory. It is not the signal that something is wrong, but that something is ready. In dreams, anxiety often shows up as pursuit, a chase, a feeling of being hunted by something we do not understand. But what chases us is not evil. It is our own potential, our own unlived energy, asking to be acknowledged. The psyche does not want us to remain small. It pushes, it prods, it disturbs, because the soul does not settle for comfort when truth is calling, and yet the cost of becoming is great. It threatens the structures we have built, the personas we have maintained, the attachments we have formed. The person who dares to change must grieve. They must mourn the familiar, even if the familiar was suffocating. They must confront their own resistance, not because they are weak, but because they are human. To become someone new is to walk through fire. It is to dismantle the armor of habit, to step into the unknown without a guarantee. And anxiety, like a loyal guardian, tries to hold you back. It whispers warnings, floods you with doubt, fills your body with signals of danger. But these are not punishments. They are the echoes of your old self crying out, afraid of being left behind. In this sense, anxiety is profoundly meaningful. It is not random, not meaningless. It is the soul's storm before rebirth. And like all rites of passage, it must be endured with reverence. One cannot bypass the fear. One must walk through it, not to destroy it, but to understand it. Only by facing it can we integrate its wisdom. There is a misconception that strength lies in suppression, in conquering anxiety through willpower, but the true strength lies in dialogue. To sit with your anxiety, to listen to it, to ask it what it fears, is to begin the work of inner transformation. Anxiety does not ask for silence. It asks to be understood. Beneath its trembling surface lies a message: you are becoming. Each wave of anxiety is a contraction of the self as it prepares to give birth to something deeper, more authentic. And just as a mother in labor feels fear and pain, so too does the soul cry out when it is on the verge of change. But what waits on the other side is not destruction. It is integration. It is the self, whole and awake. We fear our own greatness more than we fear failure, because greatness requires responsibility. It demands authenticity. It asks that we stop playing roles and start living truth. And so we shrink, we sabotage, we procrastinate, not because we are lazy or unmotivated, but because we are terrified of shedding the skin that no longer fits. Anxiety is the sensation of that skin tightening, threatening to split. It is the psyche's alarm that something old must be released, and while the conscious mind interprets this as danger, the unconscious sees it as necessity. To evolve, we must endure disorientation. We must pass through the chaos that precedes clarity. In every anxious moment, ask yourself not, what is wrong with me, but what part of me is ready to emerge. This shift in question turns the tide. It opens the door to compassion, to exploration, to depth. The anxious mind is not broken. It is simply overwhelmed by the magnitude of transformation. Like a caterpillar dissolving in the cocoon, it cannot yet see the wings forming. What would happen if you stopped resisting? If you let the anxiety speak, not to paralyze you, but to teach you, it would tell you that you are capable of more, that the life you have lived while safe is not the whole story, that your fear is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of impending breakthrough. You are not meant to stay the same. The psyche is a living organism, and like all living things, it grows, and every stage of growth demands that something die, the illusion of certainty, the false sense of control. The outdated self-image, these must fall away so the deeper self can emerge. So the next time anxiety grips you, do not curse it, do not run from it, sit with it, breathe into it, ask it what it wants you to see. Beneath its trembling lies truth, beneath its fear lies freedom. Anxiety is not the end of your journey, it is the threshold, and the life you long for stands on the other side. Within the labyrinth of the human psyche lies the shadow, the unseen, unspoken, unloved dimension of the self. It is not evil in itself, nor something to be feared, though it has been mistaken for darkness in the moral sense. Rather, it is composed of everything we have cast out of the light of consciousness in order to belong, to be accepted, to feel safe in a world that does not welcome the whole of who we are. But what is repressed is not erased. What is denied does not disappear. It simply waits, silently, patiently, until the day it erupts, demanding to be seen. In the early years of life, we learn who we are permitted to be. We internalize the voices of parents, teachers, society, and religion. We are rewarded for being kind, obedient, agreeable. We are corrected when we express too much anger, too much fear, too much sadness. So we begin the long process of exile. We send parts of ourselves into the shadowlands of the unconscious, where they cannot disturb the mask we wear. We learn to perform. We learn to survive. But in the process we abandon our wholeness. Consider the boy who is told that real men don't cry. He will grow up proud of his strength, praised for his composure. But beneath that hardened surface, sadness gathers like storm clouds. He cannot name it, but it weighs him down. Or the girl taught that anger is unbecoming. She smiles even when she's hurt, even when her boundaries are violated. But her resentment festers, transforming into anxiety that tightens her chest and steals her breath. These are not personal failings. They are the psychic wounds of adaptation. The shadow is not our enemy. It is the container of everything we once needed to suppress to survive, the rage we never voiced, the grief we were never allowed to feel, the desires we were told were wrong, and yet these rejected aspects do not die. They live in the body, in the nervous system, in the unconscious mind, and over time they begin to manifest through depression, through panic, through patterns we cannot explain. What we do not face will find a way to face us. A young man once came to therapy insisting that he no longer had emotions. He said this not with pride, but with exhaustion. He had spent years being the strong one, the reliable one, the emotionally composed one. He had become the anchor for everyone else in his family after the death of his father, when he was only 12. He didn't cry at the funeral. He didn't fall apart. He received praise for his strength. But what no one saw was the silent deal he made with himself. To survive, I must not feel. To be loved, I must not break. Years passed. He achieved success, maintained relationships, functioned outwardly. But inwardly, he was numb. He said he was tired all the time, but doctors found nothing wrong. He believed himself to be depressed, yet could not point to any feeling. And this was the key. His depression was not the absence of emotion. It was the weight of 1,000 unspoken sorrows, buried so deeply that even he could not name them. His shadow held not only the grief of a lost father, but the rage at being left, the fear of being vulnerable, the longing to be held. Healing did not come quickly. It began with permission, the permission to stop being the strong one, the composed one, the perfect one. It began with creating space to feel what had been exiled for years. And in time he met the shadow he had run from. He wept, not only for his father, but for the boy who was never allowed to fall apart. And in that sacred undoing he began to live again. This is the journey of the shadow, not toward indulgence, but toward integration. We do not explore our hidden selves to justify destructive behavior or to dwell in pain. We turn toward the shadow to reclaim the pieces of ourselves we abandoned in the name of survival. We meet our anger so that it no longer poisons our relationships. We name our sadness so that it no longer clouds our joy. We own our fears so that they no longer dictate our choices from the shadows. The path is not easy. The ego will resist. It has worked hard to build a persona that keeps us safe. It fears that if we look too closely at what we've buried, we'll be overwhelmed. But the truth is this: the shadow is only frightening when left unseen. The moment we bring it into the light, it loses its power to control us. It becomes not a monster, but a wounded child waiting to be loved back into wholeness. Many of our deepest struggles, depression, anxiety, self-sabotage, are not signs of weakness or disorder. They are expressions of the shadow's cry for attention. They are the psyche's way of asking us to turn inward, to listen, to integrate. Until we do, we remain split, living one life outwardly while another life waits, hidden and silent, beneath the surface. To deny the shadow is to live half a life. It is to be incomplete. We may gain the world's approval, but we lose ourselves. We may look composed, but feel empty. We may be surrounded by people, yet feel profoundly alone, because no one truly knows us, not even ourselves. But when we face the shadow, when we embrace the parts of ourselves we once feared or hated, we begin to experience true freedom, not the freedom of pretending everything is fine, but the freedom of being whole, of feeling without shame, of acting from authenticity rather than compulsion, of choosing our path with awareness rather than unconscious repetition. This is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice, a commitment to inner honesty, to self-compassion, to the sacred work of becoming real. And each time we choose to turn inward rather than run, to listen rather than judge, we reclaim a piece of ourselves. We become less fragmented. We come home. You were not born to be only half of who you are. The light in you is brilliant, yes, but it is the shadow that teaches you depth. It is the hidden, the buried, the broken that gives you roots. And when you make peace with what you have denied, you do not become someone new. You become someone true. Pain is not the enemy. It is not the cruel hand of fate come to shatter our fragile dreams. It is not punishment, nor is it merely a symptom to be removed or avoided. Pain is the great revealer. It strips away our masks, tears through the illusions we construct to survive, and leaves us exposed, trembling, undone. And yet, in that very undoing, we find the beginning of something greater than comfort. We find the possibility of transformation. To suffer is to be human. There is no life without wounds, and there is no soul that reaches maturity without first breaking open. The wound is not a sign of weakness, but the imprint of life having touched you deeply. We live in a world that teaches us to numb, to distract, to push forward at all costs. But when suffering comes, it halts us. It pulls us down into the depths. It demands that we feel, that we reckon with the truths we've ignored. It is in this descent that we are most likely to encounter the hidden parts of ourselves, the parts that long to be heard, the parts that hold our buried wisdom. In many ancient cultures, the wound was seen as sacred. It marked the place where the divine met the mortal. The Greek myth of Chiron, the wounded healer, is not just a story. It is a psychological truth. He could not heal others until he learned to sit with his own pain. We too carry this paradox. Our deepest wounds, when faced with courage, become the openings through which grace can flow. They become the cracks in the armor, the spaces where light enters and begins to reshape us from within. A woman once spoke of her depression as the death of her smile. It was a phrase heavy with sorrow, with the quiet grief of a soul who could no longer pretend. She had spent decades teaching, caring for others, performing the role of joy, of strength, of composure. But underneath, something had been lost, something essential. Her smile was not merely gone from her face, it was gone from her being, and yet in that death, something unexpected emerged. Stripped of energy, stripped of drive, she found herself alone with the silence she had always avoided. And in that silence, a question surfaced: what do I want for me? Not for her students, not for her family, not for anyone else, but for herself. For the first time in her adult life, she picked up a paintbrush. Not because she believed she was an artist, but because her soul needed to express something that words could not contain. She wrote poetry. She sat in stillness. She did not cure her depression, but she began to live with it as a companion, a guide, rather than an enemy. Her suffering became a container, a sacred vessel in which a more authentic self could take root. We often think of healing as a return to the way things were, but true healing is not a restoration of the past. It is a recreation of the self. The person who emerges from pain is not the same as the one who entered it. There is no going back. Pain transforms us. It reorients our values, deepens our empathy, widens our perception. It dismantles the false structures we built around our identity, and in their place, something more enduring can be born. Depression and anxiety are often misunderstood. They are not merely dysfunctions of the brain. They are cries from the soul. They ask us to stop, to listen, to reevaluate. They ask us to become more honest with ourselves. They strip us of the ability to perform, to smile on cue, to keep marching forward without reflection. And though they bring suffering, they also bring opportunity, if we have the courage to listen. It is a terrible irony that what most people run from is often the very thing they need to encounter. We numb pain because we fear it will consume us. But in truth, what consumes us is the resistance. What grows unbearable is not the wound itself, but the effort to suppress it, to deny its presence, to plaster over it with distractions and superficial solutions. But when we turn toward the wound, when we give it our attention, our compassion, our willingness to feel, it begins to change. It does not vanish, but it softens, it speaks, it teaches. No one escapes life without scars. But scars are not signs of defeat. They are evidence of survival. They tell the story of what you've endured, what you've overcome, and what you've integrated. They are the symbols of the soul's alchemy, the transformation of suffering into wisdom, of pain into purpose. It is in the crucible of adversity that character is forged, that depth is cultivated, that the real self begins to shine through. And yet, this path is not one of romance or simplicity. It is dark. It is lonely. It is filled with nights where you question everything, including your own worth. But the darkness is not empty. It is fertile. It is the womb of the new self. Just as a seed must break to grow, so must we be broken open to evolve. Just as the earth must be disturbed to yield fruit, so must the soul be shaken to awaken. You do not have to be grateful for your pain, but you can honor it. You can allow it to shape you, to carve you into someone more whole, more compassionate, more alive. Do not rush to heal in a way that denies what you felt. Do not seek to cover the wound so quickly that you miss what it came to reveal. Sit with it, learn from it, let it teach you who you truly are. The world will tell you to move on, to bounce back, to be strong, but real strength lies in the willingness to feel deeply, to let your suffering change you, not harden you, to become softer, not weaker, more open, not more guarded. That is the strength of the soul, the strength born from brokenness that was never truly broken, but simply rearranged. The wound is not a mistake. It is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of your becoming. It is the place where you meet yourself most honestly. It is where the light finds its way in, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. And in that light a deeper life begins, one not built on roles or appearances, but on truth, on authenticity, on the full spectrum of your humanity. The wound is sacred, and within it lies the seed of your rebirth. You are not broken, though it may feel, in the depths of your despair, that something essential in you has shattered beyond repair. I must tell you, this is not the case. The heaviness you carry, the sorrow you hide, the confusion that clouds your every thought, these are not signs of your ruin, but signs of something deeper stirring beneath the surface. In a world that worships comfort and quick fixes, anything that disrupts our sense of control is labeled a problem, a dysfunction, a disorder. But discomfort is often the doorway through which truth enters. Depression, anxiety, the disorientation of the soul, these do not always indicate illness. Sometimes they are sacred signals, invitations. You are not being punished. You are being called, not to collapse, but to awaken. Not to give up, but to go inward. The self, the deeper, wiser part of you, uses these very states of unrest to pull you back to what matters. When the path you are on no longer aligns with your truth, the psyche rebels. It refuses to comply, and that rebellion often takes the form of suffering. In the silence of the night, when distractions fade and the inner noise becomes louder than the world outside, you may hear a faint whisper, "There is more to you than this." That whisper is not madness. It is memory. A memory of who you once were before the world taught you to forget. A memory of your essence, before you traded it for approval, for survival, for fitting in. You were not born to play a role. You were born to be whole. But wholeness is not found in perfection. It is found in the messy, sacred middle of transformation. And transformation is not beautiful at first. It is often terrifying, disorienting, painful. Like the caterpillar that dissolves inside the cocoon, there is a stage in becoming where everything you were must fall apart. Your old stories, your false beliefs, your carefully constructed persona, they begin to break down. And it feels like death, but it is not the end. It is the beginning of emergence. Think of the caterpillar. It does not grow wings by adding them piece by piece. It must first surrender entirely. It must become formless, vulnerable, undone. Only then can the blueprint of the butterfly, already hidden within its cells, begin to activate. If someone were to cut open the cocoon prematurely, to relieve the caterpillar from its discomfort, they would not save it. They would destroy the very process that leads to flight. So too with the human soul. If we rush to soothe the pain without listening to it, we rob it of its meaning. We interrupt its message. We silence the voice that came to guide us home. You may believe that healing means returning to who you used to be. But that version of you is gone, not because you failed, but because you outgrew it. The life you once lived no longer fits the soul you are becoming. This is not regression, this is evolution, and like all real growth, it begins with a rupture. A break in the pattern, a question you can no longer ignore. Is this truly me? If the answer is no, then the pain you feel is not a flaw. It is clarity. You were not meant to walk through this world asleep. You were not meant to spend your life playing roles, fulfilling expectations, wearing masks. The ache inside you, the sorrow you carry, is the soul's way of knocking on the walls you've built around yourself. It is asking you to come back, back to your values, back to your integrity, back to the dreams you buried because someone told you they were impossible or impractical or too much. And yet, even as I say this, I know that your suffering feels unbearable. I know it has moments where it blinds you, paralyzes you, makes you doubt everything. That is the nature of the cocoon. It is dark and tight and lonely, but it is not meaningless. Something inside you is being reordered. Something essential is trying to come through, and though you may not see it now, though all evidence may seem to point to failure or loss, you are in a sacred process, one that is larger than your understanding. There is no straight path back to yourself. There is no formula, no easy fix, but there is a way, and it begins by honoring the call, not avoiding it, not numbing it, not disguising it with productivity or denial, but listening, surrendering, trusting that your pain has a purpose, even if it hasn't revealed itself yet. When the soul calls, it does not always speak in words. It speaks in emotions, in dreams, in bodily unrest. It speaks in moments when life no longer feels real, when the roles you play feel hollow, when your smile feels like a lie. These are not signs that you are broken. These are signs that something deeper in you is awakening, and it is asking for your attention. The anxiety you feel may not be a warning of danger. It may be the energy of new life trying to break through the walls of the old. Do not mistake your suffering for failure. Do not believe that your struggle makes you unworthy or weak. You are not meant to be the same after this. You are meant to emerge wiser, more compassionate, more aligned with who you truly are. The pain is not your identity. It is the pressure that precedes expansion. It is the fire that burns away what is false so that what is true can remain. If you are in that space now, the space where nothing makes sense, where everything feels heavy, where you doubt your ability to go on, I want you to know this: you are not alone. Many have walked this path. Many have passed through this dark forest and come out on the other side, not as they were before, but as something more whole. You will not remain in this place forever. The cocoon does not last. But it is necessary. You are not being punished. You are being prepared for the life that calls you, for the voice that is yours, for the path that only you can walk. This is not the end of your story. It is the middle, the sacred, messy, unbearable middle, where the old falls away and the new has not yet taken form, where everything feels uncertain, and yet everything essential is being reborn. You are not broken. You are being called, and when the time is right, when the truth within you is ready, you will emerge, not as someone fixed, but as someone free. If you are in the depths of despair, don't just ask, "How do I escape this?" Ask, "What is this trying to show me?" Your pain is not pointless. Your anxiety is not meaningless. Your depression is not weakness. These are not the enemies of your life. They may be the rough hands of your deeper self trying to wake you up. There is truth hidden in your suffering. Dare to listen. You are not lost. You are becoming.